Ba-da-ba-ba, ba-da-ba-ba. All right. Promoter 101. 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 Promoter 101.
This is Alex Hardy, one of the partners at Coda, and I'm on Promoter 101.
Welcome to Promoter 101. We are coming to you from jolly old England town with a very special guest co-host today, Jake Leighton-Pope. Welcome to the podcast, Jake.
Thanks, Dan. Good to be here. Long-time listener.
First-time caller. If a lot of your listeners are familiar with his surname, Jake's family is kind of royalty here in the business. His father, Carl, as you may have heard back in the podcast when he was on, worked with Ozzy to Elvis. That was episode 81. And his brother, Toby, is the co-head of the AEG UK office that we featured on episode 24, and also told an epic war story about Springsteen and McCartney on episode 75. Actually, it's my favorite war story that's ever been on the podcast. Not to mention his brother, Andrew, is also a successful agent. I believe your sister has roots in the business too, right, Jake?
Well, my sister ran my dad's business as the sort of chief officer of the office for a long time, and then she did the sensible thing of going and having a real life with children. And now she runs his property business, which I think is probably a worse curse for her, but she's a good egg. My mum is probably the most successful in the music business. She's got the biggest phone book out there. All the promoters in Europe love my mum. She's been traveling the world with these guys forever. How she's kept up with them, I have no idea.
I've had the treat of spending some time with Pamela. She is a card.
Yeah, she's the best.
Let's talk about you. You were an agent at CAA, which is no small feat to begin with, and you left the security of that to try your hand at management.
Yeah, part thought through, part midlife crisis, I think, all at the same time. I started my career in management. Back when I left university, I started working for a guy called Mark Moreau, who'd run Island Records for a long time, and he'd started a management company with a couple of guys, and we managed Paul Oakenfold, who was the number one DJ in the world at the time. Richard Ashcroft had just come out of the Verve, and this other kind of crazy little band called Lemon Jelly, who I love, and check them out if you've never heard them.
Lemon Jelly, kind of a Pearl Jam riff?
Yeah, I think so, but they were like kind of a chill out, interesting thing, but they were incredibly weird guys, and I loved working for them, although they were very testing for a 24-year-old. But then I did a bunch of different things. I left management. I unfortunately was sick for a while, came out of the business for a couple of years, tried my hand at a few, I worked for Bravado at the time doing merchandise. I did a bunch of things, and eventually I was 31. I got offered a job at both William Morris and CAA because they'd both started offices in London, and they were looking for people that they could kind of staff up with quite quickly. They had rosters, and I loved the William Morris guys. Sol Parker and those guys are all good friends of mine, but Emma and Mike, they laid out a real plan for me, and their office was really close to my house, so I quite like that. And so for 10 years straight, I actually left 10 years to the day of working for them as a frontline agent, and I booked thousands and thousands of shows, and I can't say enough about the CA team, and those guys are great. They were great to me, and we left on the best terms. I just needed a different challenge. I wanted to get back to music. I always liked making records, being involved in that process, being involved in the creative process. So, this week I've done a remix on one song. I've got my young artist Anna Straker in making 2 new songs with a guy called Karma Kid, who's really hot. And then yesterday I was at a film shoot for Will Young's new single. I'm in the bar with the guys talking about live stuff on Wednesday. My life is much more varied, which is what I wanted it to be. Although I got to say, working for an agency, you know where your check's coming from every week. So it's a different business in management business for sure.
Putting all your eggs in one basket, so to speak. Whereas when you're an agent, you can usually handle a handful more clients, especially when you're a new manager. You got to keep it small so you can actually get involved and get hands-on in that stuff.
Oh, for sure, yeah. I mean, I had probably 50-something acts on my roster as an agent at CAA. I think I added up one day, I think I had 14 shows on one day in London, which I think is impossible.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was one really weird day where I had the Albert Hall, Hammersmith Apollo, Shepherd's Bush Empire, and a club show all sold out in London. And which one do you go to? Yeah, but that's the life of an agent. You grind it out, and you can do capacity because it's a very linear business, and I loved working with those clients. I think for me, I just got a little bit too far away from music, and I wanted to get back to music, and I'd always kind of done that.
Sounds a little Jerry Maguire to me.
A little bit, yeah. There was a bit of that, and thankfully I got a good wife who kind of went go for it. And I must say, my brother and my dad have been incredibly supportive. I've got young kids that need funding, so keep funding them, guys. I'm having a lot of fun with it, and I think for over the next couple of years, we'll work out what the business is going to look like. Plus, on a much more business point of view, management's going to be where it's at pretty soon. There is a really incredible opportunity to access to this market now that streaming's really online. You're no longer at the beck and call of a record company. And I think that is a really exciting prospect.
Well, I think management's always been where it's at for a good manager. Saying you're a manager is such a broad term. There are very few great managers. There are a lot of good managers, and there are a massive amount of terrible managers.
Of course.
But it's always where it's at when you can find a good manager. You find somebody like Bill Silva that has a mind for it, and shit, it's going to change the game for the artist.
Yeah, I mean, I've been lucky enough to grow up around some great managers. Bruce Allen, family, uncle, friend, mentor, Randy Burswick, these guys who crafted those careers. But the osmosis of it, I think actually I'm kind of hopefully going to benefit from a bit of age. Starting to be a manager around 40 feels like I can talk to young artists without feeling like I'm on solid ground. I've been here before. I've seen that before. Let's talk about how we can move it forward. But you're absolutely right. There is no qualifications to be a manager. You simply say, I'm a manager, and you start managing tomorrow and see what happens. And actually, I just walked downstairs. It's early in the morning on Friday, and thankfully the ILMC have started a futures program, and there's a line of kids who are all under 30 going in for a seminar this morning to try and learn from a few old folks. And we need to pass it down. And like I've been fortunate enough to through family. I'm a massive believer in passing it forward. And one of my roles at CAA was really to help the trainee program and work with those guys to bring them through. And I'm super happy that Greg and those guys at ILMC are pushing downwards, because we do need to pass forward some of the values that we've grown up with. It's not some of the bad ones, but some of the good ones.
All right. And before we jump back into the podcast, I want to give some people some of the acts that you're working with, so they can go to Spotify and check out some of these acts so we can get the industry aware of who you're working with.
Sure. So I started working for a guy who I was an agent for, a guy called Will Young, who was the first ever guy to win Pop Idol 18 years ago. Any Pop Idol ever, before it went to America, before it went anywhere else, he was the first guy to win. So in the UK, he's a household name. He's got a big podcast called Homo Sapien. Great guy. I love him. I've been with him for 7 years.
You were his agent, right?
I was his agent with Emma Banks. We always got on. He kind of left everybody, left the music business, didn't want to write another record, didn't want to sing another song. And we sat in his, he was in our equivalent of Broadway, the West End, doing a show over the summer, and we sat in his dressing room, and it's a good story, really. He wanted to go back on the road because he liked performing. We didn't really want to make a record. And I think what's really exciting about him is that he just fell in love with music again and got back on the music train. So, we're really excited to be doing it. And another girl who came out of my management career, or agent career, a girl called Anna Straker, who is a young, fabulous singer. Really excited about her, what she can do. And she's working away in the studio. And I think that's the kind of interesting thing about being on this side of the fence, is you never really understand how long it takes to make music unless you're making it. And agents and promoters, we pick up everything right at the end of the process. We're kind of the last people that they call. Whereas, you're talking about 6, 7, 8 months to get things done. And the hardest thing, and I knew this when I was a manager before with Paul Oakenfold, the hardest thing in this business, you think putting a show's hard, you think putting these things are hard. I promise you the hardest thing in this business is finishing a song. Is actually saying that's finished, put it in the can.
Because art's never finished.
Well, it's like being pregnant. You never really want to give birth because the pregnancy thing is so great. And I've never been pregnant. At some point, you have to give birth. You have to give it to the world. You have to start.
Thankfully, nature takes over at some point.
Well, yeah. But in music, there's no nature. So it is really hard to finish things. And really exciting, but really hard to finish things.
Never had a male on the show decide to put something in reference giving birth. That's a first.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, I was there for 2 of them. You don't want to be doing it if you're a man, that's for sure. Power to the women right there.
There was some sad news. One of the bigger guys in the industry is gone, right?
Yeah, and I didn't actually know Jerry Stickles. I find out through some Facebook friends that Jerry Stickles dies, and I start Googling who he was and reading a little bit about his career and realizing that, there's a history to what we do, and there's, I'm sure, a lot of young guys out there listening. But, Jerry, and this is a great lesson, actually, we're talking about Futures Kids, but Jerry took a job driving Jimi Hendrix in 1966 and became Hendrix's tour manager, and then went on to become Queen's tour manager and production manager, went on to become McCartney's, Elton John's, had an absolutely influential history in our business, sadly died this week. But, I'm sure, and I don't know him, and I don't know the story as much as I'd love to, but I'm sure he took the job just to see where it goes. And I give the advice to young people out there that take the Jerry Stickles route and take the driving job, take the catering job, take the, runner's job, and if you want to break into the business, take the job and make it your own. So, much love to Jerry and his family and everybody that knew him.
R.I.P. Jerry. But you did pick the right week to be here. Paradigm's Erik Selz talks about going indie and joining Windish and later Paradigm.
Okay, let's get to it and hear what you have to say.
Isada Hartmann. I work for AG Berlin as Senior Director Booking, and I'm on Promoter 101.
The podcast can be found in so many places now. Where do you listen to the podcast, Jake?
Well, Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, probably not in the UK, but in America, big time. What about you?
You know, I can't get enough of listening to myself. So Spreaker, SoundCloud, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Music. I like to listen to me on all the formats just to see if I change it up.
So you are everywhere, basically, now.
It's a little weird. Hey, if there's something you want to share with us, you can just simply email us at steiny@promoter101.net. We are happy to respond to you day or night, here to answer all of your troubling needs.
So come on, get on Twitter at WLukePierce or Dan's at The Jew. And the show is at Promoters101. Promoters plural, by the way, but you know where to find us.
Are you on Twitter?
I am at JakeLP.
I like that. Long play.
Yeah, well, or Leighton-Pope. But it works both ways.
We're also on Instagram at Steiny at Promoter101. Luke's W. Luke Pierce, and I am Dan Presents.
You know, or on the Facebook guys at Promoter101.
And if you're on Tumblr while you're searching for other things, Promoter 101's there as well.
World Wide Web, Promoter101.com.
So hello, my name is Christian Daw. I'm from C2 Concerts in Stuttgart, Germany, and we're on Promoter 101.
Well, there's just no better way to name drop a ton of good people. They announce the birthdays for this week. March 12th to 18th. And happy birthday, guys.
Tuesday, the 12th, Ben Schiffer, Steve Eccles, Adam Brill, Lynn Segari, and Patrick May.
Jeff Gregg, happy birthday.
One of your old CAA blokes.
Yeah, of course.
314, Ticketmaster Scott Eller.
On the 15th, Ron Berman.
316, Nicole Carlson.
There's a bunch of you on Sunday the 17th. Mike Taylor, Steve Ferguson, and my good friend Brian Greenbaum.
Another CAA guy.
Yeah.
On Monday, 318, Brian Penix, Debbie Keller, Josh Humiston, and Larry Shields.
So happy birthday to all you guys out there, and keep listening to Promoter 101.
Hi, this is Bruce Solar from APA. I'm about to tell you some very, very secret stuff on Promoter 101.
Up next, a very special war story from our good friend Barnaby Harrod, the English Spanishman.
Barnaby, I'm excited for your interview coming up, but let's start with some rock and roll war stories.
This is back in the day when, as I say, I traveled a lot around with the band myself because I felt I should. When I was starting out.
A guide.
Yeah, sort of a guide, and it was Spain, and I knew Spain, and I spoke English and Spanish, obviously, and I would help.
Great way to bond with the band, be right in the van.
Yeah, well, a lot of them, that's what they remember. There was this one artist who was going through a little bit of a hard time. He needed me to get him something so that he could play the show. And I wasn't going to send any of my team to go and get this thing because it meant going down to a gypsy encampment on the outskirts of town.
Maybe something not so legal?
Possibly.
You were in school, right? This is back in the day.
Back in the day, a long time ago. But I can't. I'm not going to send someone down there. Obviously nowadays I wouldn't think about doing it myself. But I was starting out. The artist, he wasn't going to play. The show was sold out.
Show must go on.
Show must go on. So I go down there and I get what I need. And I come back. Turns out that what I got wasn't what he needed. I was like, "What do you mean?" And he said, "No, this isn't what I need." So I had to go back. Went in, changed it for what he wanted, came out. As I came out, these two guys, I had to go down these dark stairs. They got to me at the bottom of the door, and one of them put a dirty syringe up to my neck. I could feel it just pricking, not breaking blood, but...
It was right there.
It was right there. And then they went through all my pockets, took everything that I had on me. And it was like, man, the one thing they didn't get was the one thing that the artist needed. And that's because I'd hidden it on my body, which is, in case you get stopped. So I'd hidden it on my body, and I got back, and I took it out, and I said, "Here's your bloody stuff, I've had my phone nicked, I've had my keys nicked, I've had my credit cards nicked." He was like, "Oh man, I'm so sorry. How much was that?" He brought out his wallet. "How much was the phone? $300. Take it. How much was in your wallet? $200." He wasn't worried about the money. He just started giving me money. He was worried about that.
Did you let him pay for it?
Yeah. I was angry, man.
You didn't have the box office receipts with you, did you? The box office money was still protected,
Yeah,
right?
thank you.
Okay.
Anyway, but he got it, and you know what happened? The show went on.
He's just so grateful you found what he needed.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Barnaby. What an amazing war story. Barney is something special. We're going to have a full interview coming up with him in just a couple of weeks, but this is just a little something to whet your appetite.
Hi, this is Michael Hosking, Midas Promotions, and I'm happy to be on Promoter 101.
Dan forgot to announce the Promoter 101 Badass of the Week.
Show's not over yet. It's not too late. But this week we're going to shine a spotlight, since we're over here in good old fancy London, to pick one of their own. Brian Ahern from William Morris Endeavour, who has had an amazing career and is overseeing the London UK office for WME. Great guy, totally down to earth, making him this week's Promoter 101 Badass of the Week.
Well done, Brian.
Nick Matthews from Coda Agency, and I'm on Promoter 101.
In our feature interview this week, we have Paradigm's Erik Selz talking about going from an indie and joining Windish and later Paradigm.
Beverly Hills, hanging out with Erik Selz. Red Rider Agency in the house, going old school.
Red Rider, RIP, 2014.
What RIP is it? You guys got acquired, right?
Well, acquired. I spoke with Tom probably for 6 years about folding into the Windish Agency. The first meeting, I had just come from Yom Kippur services, and I was in a suit. The crew at Windish, I think, was wondering why I was there in a suit.
You like to look good for Tom.
Tom dresses well. I was half a block away, Red Rider from Windish. Tom and I saw each other all the time. I've known him since the early 90s. He came to my wedding in 1996. And after going back and forth, I think we met every year for 6 years. I finally realized that it was time to fold up Red Rider into a bigger entity.
Was there a time before his break that you guys shared office space or something?
No, I started Red Rider above the Empty Bottle, and I was there for a couple of years, and then I moved above Reckless Records on Milwaukee Avenue in Wicker Park, and I was there for, I think, 17 years. And then the Windish Agency was literally a quarter mile away, walked down the street, and started there in 2014.
So you were with Tom, and you were there a handful of years, and then you guys got acquired by Paradigm?
Yeah, I was there for 2 years, and then the Paradigm thing happened in 2016.
Paradigm is buying every agency in the world, it seems like.
Right.
X-Ray and Coda and Paul Morris just keeps growing and growing and growing. And obviously the Windish thing was no small feat, and obviously some huge news out of Nashville recently. So the growth is insane.
Yeah. It's been really fun. I got to be honest. I felt like I'd hit a ceiling at Red Rider. I had so much respect for so many of the agents at Windish, and I wanted to be in a room with a bunch of really smart, creative people, be able to collaborate with them and not really be at the top of a small Red Rider pyramid. And that's happened. When I folded into Windish, my goal was to really weave myself into the company and do co-books, which I'd really never done with a bunch of different agents. And I did that at Windish, and I've done it to a greater extent at Paradigm, and it's been super fun.
You had a band blow up very early in your career.
Right.
Squirrelin' Up Zickers broke a single. You don't see that once in a career sometimes never even in a lifetime, but that song was everywhere. Afterlife was like huge, right?
Yeah.
So you were able to retain the act years after, but as an indie, you kept the act. They were loyal to you, and you got to handle this act that went from club nothingness to selling out huge ballrooms overnight.
Right.
You were young as an agent at that moment. How did you handle figuring out how to build them up and grow them up without having that? Like, because now if you blew up an act into a stadium, you could walk in and ask Jonathan and Marty and Larry for help. You have those resources at Paradigm. But back then, you were doing it on your own.
I think back then in Chicago, I think we kind of leaned on each other. When I had a question, I could call Tom, or I could call someone at Billions. Flower was across the hall from Red Rider for most of the 17 years that I was above Reckless Records. And we were close friends, and we would bounce ideas off each other all the time. The Zippers were one of two artists that I booked and then ended up managing. And that was, and I assume is still, not legal in New York or LA, but it was,
can't double dip.
Just fine in Chicago. But yeah, the Zippers was a great run. My wife and I had our first kid in 1999. And that was right at sort of the apex of the Zippers. And that was also around the time that I started managing them in addition to booking them. So I really kind of froze my booking roster at Red Rider, didn't add to it for a few years because I was a dad, my schedule was upside down, and I was focusing on booking and now managing this band coming off a platinum record. So that cycle of not really contraction at Red Rider, but things really didn't grow in terms of the roster size. That happened again with the second band that I ended up managing, which was Carbon Leaf. Booked them and then managed them with Doug LaFrac for a little while.
Huge AAA success.
Yeah, we got them top 5 AAA song. And then they made a run at Hot AC.
And they did like Toad the Wet Sprocket before then. They cradled both sides of the Hot AC and the pop charts and AAA simultaneously, which you don't see a lot of.
Yeah.
Now you don't see it at all anymore because there's very few AAA stations. But in the 90s, AAA was massive.
I think the order of operations at radio, and my wife has done radio promotion as long as I've been booking. She runs radio for Mick Management and for 7S. So I've always had a unique look into that space. Her specialty is really AAA, and I've seen her cross artists from AAA, and then the next step is Hot AC, and then it goes over to pop.
It's an amazing thing if you can chart on 3 different platforms simultaneously with the same song. It's like it just expands your audience so hard.
Right.
I mean, it's different now because the internet has changed the way people listen to music, obviously. But back then, you just listened to a station and you left it on in work and you just forgot about it. It's just in the background.
Yeah, but I have a front row seat to Amy's work, my wife, and I really feel like terrestrial radio is a relevant and important brick for an artist in just kind of building a foundation. I saw it with Andrew Bird. His real success at AAA happened a couple of albums ago, and it built a foundation that we still work off of today.
So you managed for the World, right?
Yes.
Did you book for the World?
I did not. But actually, neither the Zippers nor Carbon Leaf really did that much work overseas. They were mostly touring in America and Canada.
And as the manager, that was your decision anyway, right? For the most part?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. In the Zippers case, their contemporaries were Big Bad Voodoo Daddy and Cherry Poppin' Daddies and Setzer.
It all had to do with that swingers movie breaking that whole genre.
Yeah,
huge.
and I don't know that scene ever really exploded nearly to the extent in Europe that it did in the States.
Right, because that was kind of an art house movie everywhere else besides the States where it kind of broke right open.
Right.
I can't imagine how long ago that movie was now, but God, it's got to go back like 27, 28 years.
Yeah. Again, that peak of the Zippers was in the mid to late 90s.
We're showing our age.
We're showing our age for sure.
So when you're trying to sign an act, what jumps out at you? Now you're at Paradigm, you're an agency, poaching's probably not a huge problem for you because you're a top 6 agency. You guys can protect your acts pretty well. It's got to have changed from being an indie, I would imagine, where you had to be worried about that a little more, although probably less as the manager of the act at the same time.
Right.
A great way to protect the act, huh?
Yeah.
Manage them and book them.
Exactly.
But that's going to be a great thing about being at Windish and then Paradigm, right? The security of being at a major agency that has all of those resources of the branding and the film and the size, scope of you guys do stadiums and you do arenas and you have lots of that stuff worldwide.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, we do have a ton of resources. I do feel like it's dangerous with a newer artist to overpromise with the service departments, with the corporates, with the colleges, with the branding. That will evolve over time. I mean, listen, at Red Rider, I would lose every cool European act that I was chasing to Marty and Tom. So it is exciting to work in that space with confidence, knowing that I've got great resources behind me.
So when you're going after an act now, you can pick up the phone and see if they're going for it too, and possibly just join on the same team and go after it together.
For sure.
It's all in the family.
Yeah, and the agent teams form in different ways. Patrick, who books Lincoln Hall and Shubas in Chicago, he and I were taking the bus down to work one day, and he told me about this Turkish Dutch band called Alten Goon. And I checked it out at work, and I put it up on our A&R intranet, and the same day, Buongiorno had put it up there as well. And then we find out that John Salter at ATO is about to sign them. And so Buongiorno and I are just doing it together. If multiple agents come at an artist from different angles, more often than not, the solution is to just team up.
The great thing about that is you guys are in different offices, right? So the things that you're going to hear at the water cooler are different things than he's going to hear in New York at the water cooler.
Correct.
So twice as many resources, twice as many ears.
Right. And I mean, with Alten Goon, they will live in the psych rock space. They will live in the jam space a little bit. They'll live in the indie space a little bit. And we look at the combined experiences that Buongiorno and I both bring. I think for the artist, that's an exciting mix.
So when you guys are booking a tour or routing a tour, are you on the phone together saying which venue, or do one of you mock up a routing and send it to the other one with their ideas for venues, and then you guys will go back and forth with, okay, I was thinking this, not that?
I would say both. There's no rule book. It's funny. I co-book with maybe 8 or 10 different agents at Paradigm now across a whole bunch of different projects. And, sometimes you kind of knock heads and the workflow isn't really smooth out of the gate. Other times it is. But eventually you find your flow and you leverage each other's strengths. And I think the artist wins.
It's an interesting thing. I would think that you'd pair up with the same people over and over again. So different act, different partners.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've got a routing system in the Paradigm cloud. Some agents route in the cloud. Some route on Google Docs together. Some route on Excel. Some route with pen and paper. And so, yes, the workflow with every co-book is different.
Somebody literally faxed me their routing the other day, like with handwritten on it, like college rule. First of all, I didn't realize our fax machine was still hooked up.
Right.
It was probably the first time in 6 months a fax had come through. Excel seems like such an old school way of doing that because Google Docs, you can all be in simultaneously.
Correct.
Whereas Excel, you got to send them back and forth and hope you have the most up-to-date version. If somebody updates one and not the other, you're screwed.
My go-to is Google Docs.
We switched to Google Docs too with all this stuff internal for us. It's just so much easier because once you're past 3 people looking at a document, too many versions of that Excel document going back and forth.
Right, for sure.
You all got to be able to work in it at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, but look, I mean, at the end of the day, the mechanics of booking, it's holds, it's offers, it's evaluating the offers. And so one or the other agent will just kind of take it and say, okay, we've mapped it out, we've strategized it. I'm just going to go book it and finish it.
So I've noticed recently, particularly because we co-promote a lot now that we're moving into the tour lane, that promoters can be bitchy. I always thought we were the easy ones to work with, but I've learned recently that it may not be the case. demands on almost every part of things. Like buyers can be very, very difficult. And for us, it's a little more streamed because we deal with the managers and the agents and we work on the routing with them. But it's a streamlined process usually once we're on team.
Right.
But when I'm dealing with the local guys and they have these criterias of, oh, we only do promoter profit deals. And it's like, oh, we do house nuts and all of these interesting things that I know the managers are never going to sign off on. And you guys have to balance this all day long. And I always thought you guys had the easiest job once a band broke. It's like just waiting your time until a band broke. And I realized how bitchy our side of the table can be sometimes.
I grind through offers more than most, and certainly just want to be sure that my artist is getting as fair a shake as most others coming through the venue. The shareable revenue that's on a deal sheet these days, when I started booking, it was almost all in front of you on the deal sheet. Everything was up for grabs. And now more and more promoters are finding ways to remove money from the deal sheet, whether it's ticketing fees or FMFs or unmanifested seats.
Facility maintenance fee.
You know, it's a challenge. I do feel like there's some policing that we need to do.
Well, it's a check and balance, right?
It is a check and balance.
I think if unwatched, the promoters would see the managers and the acts spending all the money on production and building things out without us there to say, you're spending too much, you're going to lose on the date. It's not safe. There would be no back ends on dates because production would be amazing for club shows that sold no tickets.
Right.
The promoters, because it's our money, we've been given that task to say no.
Right.
That balance between fighting for the best show and the production and the balance of fighting for the economy of scale that's involved with the show. Hopefully, if we all do our jobs right, we find that balance where it financially works for the night.
Mm-hmm.
And when somebody steamrolls over somebody else and you see a club show losing $5,000 with the best video ever for 18 people, you know, somebody didn't do their job.
It's funny. I was talking with another agent at Paradigm the other day. I think I'm a pretty good agent. I do get an extraordinary number of sellout offers these days. And I think more and more often we're seeing sellout offers on paper.
You say on paper, I'm getting the sense that you don't think that actually internally means that
because there's so much money from these ancillary revenue streams off the deal sheet that the promoter knows that they can lean on, that it may look like a sellout offer on paper, but in reality, if the venue gets to 60 or 70%, the promoter is in the black. The danger there, I think, for the artist is really the artist can get paid. The agent gets paid, the promoter gets paid. The loser is the artist optics if they're playing to a half full room. You know what I mean?
No, I get what you're saying. I just think that the competitive nature of the business for the cool acts, let's be very clear, it doesn't happen on the acts that aren't cool, the acts that aren't super hip, that, you know, are playing the festivals. The rest of it, it's like, it's either sexy at the box office and everybody's fighting for it. But the average show is usually one phone call to one buyer, one offer, a little haggling and confirmed.
Mm-hmm.
It's the band that everybody wants in their club that they're willing to lose at the door and make it up on the bar to get that show in. You know,
right.
Those are the shows that you see the stupid things happening where technically the show is losing money on paper completely just to get that show in, which I always find interesting. It's like, I have the honor of promoting this act. I'm willing to pay you 110%. I don't get the business part of that. I'm like, you're buying the most expensive VIP package you possibly can. It's a very out there. I've never really understood it.
The transparency, I think, in the late 90s and the early millennium, before all of these ancillary revenue streams became sort of in vogue, I miss that a little bit. Again, I think that back then, most or all of the revenue was in front of me in the deal sheet. We could create a fair deal for the promoter, for the artist, and now there's a lot more policing that needs to be done.
Okay, well, it's certainly a job, and there's economy there. I have a hard time believing that your bands aren't doing very well at this point in business, though. It seems like you've got a really strong roster.
Yeah, they are for sure.
Ticket prices are higher. There's more volume. There's more acts. There's more shows. I imagine you're grossing more, you're booking more, and you're making more than you were in your Windish days and probably your Red Rider days.
Correct.
The traffic is just awe-inspiring.
Well, I was talking with another agent the other day, and we were like, wow, by March, we might be able to take a vacation because most of 2019 is going to be done. And of course, there will be lots and lots of tours that come in at the last minute that you need to fill out. But I'm booking into December, into early 2020 right now. With Andrew Bird and with Bad Bad Not Good, we're planning well into 2020.
It seems like Andrew could route a couple of years in advance because unless Radio Brick's another single, it seems like he's safely going to be able to sell 1,500 tickets in almost any market in the country, give or take.
Right.
Like he is that $35 to $45 ticket and he is just solid. I don't think anything is going to knock him down. Unless some huge movie single comes out or something, I don't see him moving into the 3,000 seaters.
He's there. I mean, you know, we're finishing his fall tour now, and it's 1,500 to 5,000 seats per market,
depending on which markets are strongest for him. But yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, but he's been consistent for the last, 15 years or so, maybe even longer. Fan base is loyal. It's there. They know the hits. They buy the new music. Like, Andrew Bird should be the goal of every artist, to become Andrew Bird.
He has been an amazing career artist. It is a joy to be involved with his career. He tends to mix up his band, at least in part, if not in whole, on nearly every album cycle. The quality of the music, I think, has remained consistent, but with new players and a new flavor on every tour.
Yeah, he's creative. He's a musician. He's talented. He's not just putting the same show out every year.
Right.
It really should be the goal of any artist. I mean, you'd be so lucky to have that career.
Right. And in our 24-hour news cycle where things are chewed up and spit out really rapidly, that kind of career artist becomes a real rarity that you can carry and work with for, decades.
Andrew's career has been based on continually art that's just continued to raise his career.
Right.
And keep the fans engaged. And keeping fans engaged is really a hard fucking thing to do.
It is. He did a couple of sessions from his living room with just friends, musician friends, and then Zach Galifianakis came in and did a little session with him, and it clicked. He's buds with Zach Galifianakis.
I like that you just went right past
Zach. Zach plays piano and came in and did a little session with Andrew. But these sessions clicked, and now it's a series called Live from the Great Room. It's really a window into Andrew's creative process because there's no rehearsals, and he's being paired up with different musicians, artists in different disciplines, and sometimes the music can fall on its face, and other times it's brilliant. He's very good at kind of living on the edge. I mean, his sets are built on improvisation with looping and sampling, and I think that tension live, whether it's these Live from the Great Room sessions that he does or live in concert, where he is improvising live, that's what keeps people engaged. There's always a twist. Invariably, his songs evolve over the course of a tour cycle and sound very different by the end of the tour cycle than they did at the beginning.
I remember seeing very early on Bruce Hornsby in my musical education, maybe 93 or something. I remember he came on and he played maybe second on the bill, and he started playing one of the hits and everybody loved, and it's one of those moments where he's like, it may sound a little different because we record them very quickly and then we go on the road for 25 years and we learn to play them.
Right.
That's how music evolves.
Yeah.
And I thought it was the most artistic way of explaining what happens to a song in an artist's career. If they did the same song every night the exact same way it is on the album, you could just play the album. That's that live experience that connects you with the artist.
Right.
That's the whole fucking point.
Right.
Do you have advice for some of the young agents coming up?
I think find artists that you believe in and sell it and don't take no for an answer. You'll still get a lot of no's. But, and with newer artists, I'm not afraid to leverage the manager, the label, and other agents at Paradigm to really drive a point home. For new artists getting on the premier festivals, it needs to be a multi-tentacled approach. So don't be too proud and just be ready when you're still unencumbered by kids to be kind of a cultural vacuum cleaner. Consume as much as you can, 24 hours a day.
Dude, that should be a band name, Cultural
Vacuum Cleaner. Yeah. My assistants are that way. We are a team. They are the glue to my team. I would not be able to accomplish what I accomplish without them. Because my roster is in so many different lanes musically, I need them to help me stay on top of all of the opportunities within each artist's sort of orbit.
Would you say that because you had a different path and you had to do it on your own as an entrepreneur, that you learned different skills coming up on your own, running your own agency that you wouldn't have gotten had you started in the mailroom?
It was really just kind of inertia that kept Red Ryder going. I started in 1995, and by 98, the zippers were cooking, and then it was kind of off to the races, and I never really looked back. When I came into Windish, I think there were like 90 people at the agency and something close to 1,000 artists. Tom needed another agent who could work at a fairly high level to come in and run the nuts and bolts on a couple of big projects, Alt-J and M83. And thankfully, through my own experiences, I was ready for that. There was and remains a lot of back and forth creatively with Tom on those two projects, but he trusted me that the agent mechanics were in place to be able to handle artists at that level. And I mean, for me, it was a dream. I'm a massive fan of both artists. In our 6th year of talking with each other, when he mentioned those two artists, the answer was yes. I was ready.
The cherry on top.
Yes.
I want to thank you so much for taking the time, Eric.
Thank you for taking the time. Appreciate it.
Eric's been a friend for the better part of 3 decades. I'm thrilled to call him a buddy and stoked to finally get him here on Promoter 101.
Fred Rosen, President and CEO of Red Carpet Entertainment. We're on Promoter 101.
Quote of the week from Elbert Hubbard. Do not take life too seriously. You will never get out of it alive.
It's a good quote, right?
Yeah, I can subscribe to that. And I think if you're in the music business, my dad always said, and I think it's probably the same quote, it's like, it's better than getting a real job.
Growing up in a house of music must have been an amazing thing. Your dad had such amazing access, those Elvis and Ozzy stories, and it goes farther than that. Bryan Adams and what have you. It's just huge career. Keith Urban. Right. It's just, it was always there. The arts were always right in front of you. Did you take that for granted, or did you realize it was something special that your friends at school didn't have?
You know, there's a bunch of us in this business, and I think if we sat down and talked to, you know, Lucy Dickens or Summer Marshall or the people that grow up in it, it's norm for us. You know, we were on the road at 4, 5, 6 years old. You know, we were kind of in that, and that environment was something that we just grew up in. I think when you start getting into your teens, you either start loving music for yourself or you shouldn't be in this business. And I can remember clearly going to university and actually I went to university in America for a year, and it was one of those stores on the end of the road that was just doing secondhand CDs. You know, and I spent so much money on secondhand CDs that I couldn't get it home. It was so heavy, the bag. I actually ended up spending more money on if I could have bought brand new. That's where my love came in it. And I think if you grow up in that household and you don't find the love for yourself, you're never going to really enjoy the business, because it will just always be about what your family did. So I think that's for me. And I think the other thing is there's nepotism everywhere, and I get it and I understand it and I'm sorry for it. But when you get in the door, it's what you do in the door that counts. Getting in the door is just a luck of the draw, I think. So, you know, I'm, you know, very lucky to have a brother who runs AG. I'm very proud of him. My brother Andrew's been an agent for 30 years, and I was at CA for 10 years. And these are all independent things of what my father did, and we're super proud of him. So, you know, it's an incredible thing to have done, to grow up in the music business, but you have to love it yourself at some point.
You know, I've never really thought about the nepotism when it's come to you and your family. I clearly met you through your brother. Is that something that you have to deal with on a time-to-time basis? It's like you got that opportunity because of his name? Or?
Well, look, I think we're all going to suffer from that. You can't run away from it. And you know, we don't have a shrinking violet father. You know, he's a very outspoken guy.
He's a big personality.
Yeah, and he has his way of doing things, right? But like I say, the name probably gets you through the door. You know, what you do through the door in this business counts.
But CAA doesn't hire you just because of your name. Like,
no,
you have
absolutely.
to do the job.
And
you wouldn't have stayed there so long if you weren't cutting it.
Absolutely. And I'd done 10 years of various things before I ever became an agent, and those things were really good. You know, I thought one of the things that was really interesting is when I became an agent, I'd already been on the road as a tour manager. I'd already done management business. So I had a whole different perspective of the business from, say, a guy who'd only ever been an agent. And it stood me well, you know, routing tours, talking to artists, talking to clients, talking to promoters, working out how things worked for me was really good. And the nepotism thing, I think, is something that's just one of those things that Toby and I kind of looked at each other a long time ago and just kind of went, just got to get over it. Like, you know, it's like some people hate us because of our names. Some people love us because of our names. And thankfully, I remember sitting in a meeting with a guy I was working for someone, and he went, right, I need you to tell me who your dad's enemies are so that we can avoid you working with them. And I was like, I don't know. I don't care. Like, this has nothing to do with me. And it was a weird conversation. And after that conversation, I was like, I'm not going to play that game ever. I'm me. Toby's Toby. The old man's the old man. We all love each other, work each other hard. We help each other with contacts. We help each other with advice. And if other people have got a little bit of an issue sometimes, and some people do, then that's cool. That's their thing. It's okay.
Your dad's got such a great personality, but it's different than both you and Toby. You guys,
100%, yeah. Well, you've been to our house. I mean,
yeah, Andrew's got a different personality than
totally.
You guys are all individual people. They're just completely different personalities.
And absolutely the same with Jonathan and Lucy and Barry Dickens. You know, that Dickens family are fantastic, and they're all completely different. They're all mad East Londoners, and I love them. But they're all, you know, they're all got a different vibe. You know, and you have. But that's why I say, I think if you don't fall in love with music and this business yourself, and you do it because your dad was in it or your brother was in it or whatever, or you got in it some in the wrong way, this business is too hard to do unless you actually love it.
I think the trippiest thing about realizing, because your dad doesn't flaunt his success in his career. I mean, he'll talk about it if you ask him, but he does.
A few bottles of champagne, and I'm sure he'll do a bit of flaunting. Yeah.
All you have to do is walk in the house and go in the loo and see the Elvis gold record, and you start to realize the incredible career. The fact that those opportunities were there were amazing, but some of those things, you know, they're real jobs. It's not like, here, you get to do this. It's like, here, go figure this out, go do this. But the opportunities that were thrown on you guys.
I know you do a lot of war stories on your podcast, and I think that's really interesting is that my dad's generation, Barry Dickens' generation, Leon Romakis, Marek Lieberberg, Andre Bichir, and a lot of these names probably aren't household to the American audience, but anyone in this business knows these people. You know, these guys, in the same way that you have the American sort of legends, these guys built a business that didn't exist.
Yeah, they're the Bill Grahams of their markets.
It didn't exist.
Right.
You know, so for us to be the next generation, yourself, me, anyone in their kind of 40s or whatever, to coming through, this generation are still in our business. They still work in our business, and they built it, and we are now the custodians of it. And it is a very different world. And, you know, every one of those guys has got a story and a history that, you know, you would just die to be a part of, because they're wrapped in our culture. They're wrapped in Queen, ABBA, the music of everyone's playlist, their life. You know, there's Barry Clayman, you know, when he was interviewed about the Beatles' first show, he goes to his drawer in his desk, puts his hand in the desk and pulls out the first contract he ever signed with the Beatles for a club show in London.
Okay, that's just fucking cool.
How are you going to ever compete with that in our generation? You know,
You're not.
you know, so you have to make it your own. You have to do your own wins. You have to have your own exciting, and you have to have your own artists and your own exciting times. You know, anyone who's out there who gets an opportunity to meet one of these guys who are still in the business, the old school of the business, you know, buy them a cup of tea, get some lessons, get some stories, because, you know, they're all in their 70s and they're all fantastic, and they've all got more stories than you could ever wish for.
And, you know, not to give too much away, but you don't even have to buy those guys a cup of tea, because most of them are going to be in the podcast in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, there you go.
This is Jim King from AEG Presents, and I'm on Promoter 101.
So there you go. End of the road for you guys. I'm sure you're shipping out to America again soon, Dan.
Yeah, I'm going to catch a flight. But we'll return this Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. And that's 9 a.m. for our friends in Tokyo and 11 a.m. Friday in Australia.
Wow, that was a mouthful, and impressive maths.
Well, Google might have helped just a little bit. Coming up next week from Coda, Alex Hardy, one of the biggest agents in the entire world, particularly the UK. Thank you so much for co-hosting this week, Jake. This has been a blast.
Absolute pleasure, Dan. Anytime you're in London, hit me up. Until then, we're wishing you sold out shows for the week.
Cheers.
Call your mum.
Hello, my name's Jane Bees. I'm the head of music at the Roundhouse, and I'm here on Promoter 101.
Ba-da-ba-ba, ba-da.